Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the breakfast news on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are this morning's headlines. Asian stocks continue to fall a day after Monday's dramatic global sell-off. Fears of a Chinese economic slowdown grips investors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes stock of the situation after Monday's bloodbath as the stock market says India should convert global crisis into an opportunity for itself. All crucial tripartite meeting on the much-delayed Posco steel plant in Odisha today. South Korean steel giant to clarify its stand on setting up the $12 billion plant. External Affairs Minister to leave for Germany today after completing the Egypt leg of her two-nation tour. Sushma Swaraj to meet her German counterpart. Our top focus on the bulletin this morning is the global economic situation. Asian stocks continue to fall today as well after the Monday mayhem. Chinese stocks continue to tumble today as well, with the mainland benchmark Shanghai Composite down 6%, extending Monday's shock losses of 8.5%. The drop, however, is less severe than what analysts had feared. Stock markets across the world fell sharply on Monday as fears of a Chinese economic slowdown gripped investors. Markets across Europe were smashed, with major markets incurring heavy losses. Here's a detailed report.
Alarm bells rang across the world markets on Monday as a near 9% dive in Chinese shares sent world stocks and commodity prices tumbling. China stock market saw their worst performance since 2007, giving up all their gains for the year on a massive sell-off that dragged down Asian markets. Japanese stocks posted their biggest fall in more than 2 years, with the Nikkei average sinking to a 6-month low. Shares in Seoul too witnessed their sharpest daily percentage loss in more than 3 years as investors avoided bets on riskier assets. Markets across Europe were also smashed. London's FTSE 100 lost 4.7% to 5,899, which is its lowest level since 2012. The pan-European stocks Europe 600 closed 5.3% lower, the biggest one-day decline since December 2008. Germany's DAX fell 4.7% to below 10,000 points for the first time since January, while France's CAC 40 index plummeted to close 5.35% down. US stock indices ended almost 4% lower in an unusually volatile session. The benchmark S&P index lost 77.68 points or 3.94%, putting it formally in correction mode. The Dow Jones Industrial Average briefly slumped more than 1,000 points, its most dramatic intraday trading range ever. The Nasdaq Composite dropped 179.79 points or 3.82% to 4,526.25, also in correction.
It looks like the epicenter is China and China related, right? We've seen a whole bunch of things start to weaken really radically, in many ways over a year, but certainly getting much more egregious or aggressive of late. We've seen the commodity space sell off, and that's an important source of global wealth, right? We've seen the emerging markets go from leadership, most of the 21st century here, leadership for emerging markets, into laggardship, and we've seen currencies start to crack. And we've also seen China, the fastest growing large economy, this caboose that historically that became the locomotive of global growth, has suddenly gone from a reason to be optimistic to a reason to be terrified. And that's cracked confidence, which was probably a little bit overdone and in need of some kind of trim, if not a buzz cut, already.
Latin America's strongest currencies, Brazil's real and the Mexican peso, also took a battering following the turbulence in Chinese mainland stocks. Brazilian stocks and currency against the dollar fell to 6-year and 12-year lows respectively. Amid volatility in the global financial markets, international pressure is now mounting on China to increase financial transparency and to move towards market-determined exchange rate system. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the Indian stock market crashed on Monday, recording its biggest fall since 2009. The Sensex shed over 1,600 points, the Nifty over 500, and nearly 7 lakh crore rupees got wiped out from investors in a single day's carnage, all because of sell-off triggered by the global meltdown. Here are the details.
The widespread unrest in markets was set in motion nearly 2 weeks ago when China sharply devalued its currency yuan. But the extent of the Monday mayhem was beyond what was expected. The markets crashed by a whopping 6.22% because of global meltdown in one of the biggest sell-offs in recent years. Sensex nosedived by over 1,740 points during the day and finally closed at 1,625 points down at 26,742. This is the biggest fall that Sensex has seen in 6 years, and it is the third biggest fall ever. The Nifty too fell by over 500 points during the day, but finally closed at 7,809. The trigger for Monday's carnage was the rout in China's equities. Shanghai shares closed 8.75% lower, marking their biggest single-day percentage loss since 2007.
Last week, the Chinese devalued their currency by nearly around 5%, and that has impacted the entire world economy, and particularly in the Southeast Asian. Today there is a total panic in the market. Our Sensex are falling, and therefore this is perhaps the high time that the RBI and the Finance Ministry should be taking review after minute to minute.
To soothe the investors, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan remained optimistic and allayed fears that there could be more in store.
There is not a single domestic factor in India which has either contributed to it or has added to it. Now, these are external factors. I have not the least doubt that this turbulence is transient and temporary in nature. The markets will settle down.
In India, we have to absorb this volatility, being fairly assured that as far as fundamentals go, the fundamentals of the economy are good, and they will reassert themselves. Eventually, after a certain amount of turmoil, markets reassess fundamentals. And when they do that reassessment, they will see that India is a good place to be. So I feel fairly confident that the turmoil will settle down, and at that point we will be a good investment destination again.
It was the third straight day of big sell-off in Indian stock markets. Stocks across all sectors, including energy, banking, auto, IT, infrastructure and real estate, saw massive selling. All 50 constituents of Nifty were also down. Tata Motors and ONGC were the worst hit, losing over 6% in early trade. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Meanwhile, the rupee too slumped to its lowest level since September 2013 on Monday. The RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan gave an assurance that the central bank would not hesitate to use forex reserves in order to reduce the currency's volatility. The currency weakened 1.3% against the US dollar on Monday following a global sell-off. But the government and RBI have assured that the Indian situation is relatively better than other countries. The RBI governor also said that India has enough foreign exchange reserves to cushion the slump in the rupee. In the last 4 weeks, the rupee has fallen nearly 4%. There are also concerns of a currency war with fears that China could be forced to devalue the yuan further.
We will have no hesitation in using our reserves when appropriate to reduce volatility in the rupee. Let me emphasize that we have $355 billion plus another $25 billion in forward purchases that are not required until next year to meet foreign currency FCNR liabilities. So we have approximately $380 billion in reserves to be used as and when the need arises.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi reviewed the crash in the stock markets and the slump in the rupee with the Finance Minister and other top officials. He, however, vowed to push ahead with the reforms agenda and increase public spending. In the top-level meeting held on Monday, the Prime Minister allayed fears and assured people that the economy was stable and that the problem was not internal but external. Modi also said that the global crisis must be converted into an opportunity for India. Well, joining me for a chat this morning to talk about this is Shubhamay Bhattacharjee, Deputy Editor of the Indian Express. Very good morning and thank you for joining us on the program. Well, as far as the situation yesterday was concerned, it was bloodbath across the markets around the world. And it seems like it's going to be a similar situation today as well, because both the Shanghai and Tokyo have opened in the red and shares have plunged in both these markets.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the initial numbers that are coming from both the markets, Hang Seng, they're not looking very good. So, but whether that would mean that the Indian markets and the world markets would actually go into a further recoil is, of course, something that we'll get to know in a few hours. I would expect that the investors would start looking at some of the chances to buy, some of the chances to recoup some of their losses, which would mean that they would go in for value picking. And overall, the sentiments that have been expressed by the finance minister and the prime minister, they should also come in very handy.
What has really spooked the markets? Is it just the devaluation of the yuan, or is it some other factors as well that have contributed to it?
Well, on Friday, Frank, that the Chinese production data that came in, that really started the problem, because the devaluation happened earlier on last week, and then this number actually confirmed for everyone that the Chinese data is now suspect. The critical problem that is happening across the world is that none of the Chinese data is looking sure. The data itself is undergoing massive correction. So as a result, it's very difficult for any fund manager, any investor to take a position on what is the correct situation in the Chinese market. And it is this uncertainty which is making the world markets nervous.
The RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan, the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister of India have come out and reassured the entire nation, sending out the right kind of messages. But what immediate steps need to be taken to ensure that the markets in India do not suffer the same way that they did yesterday?
Frank, I don't think any steps need to be taken by the government. It's not the government's job to run the markets. Investors will book losses or make profits depending on what they see going ahead. So that is an entirely self-motivated exercise. The government's job is to ensure that if there are sectors which run into crisis of cash, those sectors do not get disturbed. So there will be some losers and winners going ahead in the days to come. There will be some painful adjustments, but those adjustments have to be done. I'm very confident, and in fact I feel comfortable that when the Prime Minister says that we will go ahead with the reforms, probably this is a wonderful opportunity for us to actually focus ourselves and to say that we would be doing the GST reforms, the land law reforms, because those would ensure that the Indian markets keep on looking better at this time of crisis, rather than getting caught up in trying to ensure investors stay comfortable.
There are bigger fears that the Chinese slowdown might lead to a situation like the recession in 2008. So do you see a similar situation arising at this point in time?
Well, essentially, it is very clear that the world economy is not performing all that great. The drivers in UK, in Europe are down. The only growth drivers that is now in the world was China, India, and the USA. China is now out of the equation. So essentially, India has to create demand from within its own economy, which means actually a lot of opportunity. Because you can give a lot of people the ability to become entrepreneur, to invest themselves if rules and other processes are made easier. So essentially, it shouldn't be a recessionary position at all.
All right, Shubhamay Bhattacharya, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for putting things into perspective for us and sharing your expertise on this particular subject. Turn this into an opportunity is what our guest also is saying, just like the Prime Minister did in his address yesterday. It's now time for a short break, but still to come on the program, the all-crucial tripartite meeting on Posco's steel project in Odisha to be held today. That and much more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Tales that inspire, stories of social change. A salute to diversity, promoting public discourse. Events that motivate, inspiring the innovative spirit. Watch Rajya Sabha television documentaries every Friday at 10:30 p.m, Saturday 12:30 p.m, and Sunday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, a crucial meeting on the country's biggest FDI project will take place today. The centre has convened the much-awaited tripartite meeting on the Posco steel plant in Odisha. The meeting is to clarify South Korean steel major Posco's stand on setting up the $12 billion plant in Jagatsinghpur in Odisha. The tripartite meeting involves the centre, the government of Odisha and Posco representatives, the cabinet secretaries and secretaries of steel and mines ministries and Posco representatives will attend the meeting. Odisha will be represented by the Chief Secretary and the Steel and Mines Secretary. The meeting has been convened following the Odisha government's request to the centre to discuss issues related to the project after Posco put the project on hold. The South Korean major is going slow on the project after the new MMDR Act does not give it preferential allotment of mines as it desired. According to the new law, it will have to participate in the auction process. Well, moving on now, the NDA government is all set to bring changes in 6 major environmental laws soon. However, the Parliamentary Standing Committee, along with many activists, are criticising the move. Here are the details.
Amid widespread concern over air and water pollution, the NDA government is all set to change environmental governance based on recommendations of the TSR Subramaniam Committee. It's planning amendments in the 6 laws, including the Environment Protection Act 1986, Forest Conservation Act 1980, Wildlife Protection Act 1972, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, and the Indian Forest Act 1927. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Science, Technology and Environment has, however, raised objections, saying the recommendations will result in an unacceptable dilution of the existing legal and policy framework. Environmental activists also support the view.
I think we need not have a system where we'll pick and choose. Okay, we need an integrated solution on how do we want our environmental reforms to happen in all the legislation. And therefore, the recommendation of the Parliamentary Committee is that you make Subramaniam Committee report as the base report, set up another committee, give them more time to evaluate and develop consensus around it, I think is a valid recommendation.
Praising the work done by the committee in barely 3 months, Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar says all views will be taken on board before taking a final call.
They have studied laws, environmental laws in 10 countries which are relevant to India. So those comparative study we have done. We have done an assessment of what the law today is and what are the problems. And we have done the gap report also, that what is intended and what is not there in the laws. So now we have got all the 3 reports. Next 1 month, we'll decide what amendments we want to make actually. And then we'll go to the Parliament.
The TSR Subramaniam Committee submitted its report on 6 laws related to forest and environment in December 2014. The NDA government wants to bring amendments to those laws in the winter session. Vishal Dahiya's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Some more national news now. The flood situation in Assam has improved slightly as water level in the Brahmaputra River and its tributaries receded following cessation of rain. The death toll has risen to 14 due to incessant rains in the state. More than 8 lakh people have been affected across Assam and over 2 lakh people are still taking shelter in 296 relief camps. While the Chief Minister has appealed for an interim relief of 500 crore rupees from the central government to tackle the situation, 100 of villagers are still stranded waiting for relief.
Rainfall, বৰষুণটো কমি আছে, পানী slowly কমি আছে আৰু last which is a rainfall forecast for next 3 days also was a low to moderate. So I mean, the situation will further improve.
আজি 5 দিন বানপানী হোৱা আমি চৰকাৰৰ ফালৰ কোনো সাহায্য পোৱা নাই আমি চৰকাৰৰ সাহায্য পোৱা আমাৰ ভালো নহয় এটা চোতালত পানী আছে ঘৰত পানী আছে গৰু ঘাঁহ নাই মানুহৰ খাবলৈ নাই আমাৰ চৰকাৰ সাহায্য কৰক আমাক সাহায্য কৰিলে ভাল হ'ব মানুহক অতি ৰিলিফ দিব লাগে অলপ ৰিলিফ দিলে আমি পাব্লিকৰ সাহায্য পাম আমি অলপ
ইতিমধ্যে আমাৰ বানপানীয়ে বহুত ক্ষয়ক্ষতি কৰিলে প্ৰায় আমাৰ ঘৰখিনি প্ৰায় উঠাই লৈ গ'ল আৰু নতুনকৈ যিসকলৰ গৰাখহনীয়ে মানে লৈ গ'ল সিহঁতে মানে কোনো সাহায্য পোৱা নাই চৰকাৰী ফালৰ পৰা কিন্তু বহুত আগতেও বহুত চেনেল আহিছিলে দেখুৱাইছিলে কিন্তু ইতিমধ্যে পোৱা নাই আমি সুবিধা পোৱা নাই প্ৰায় বানপানীত আমি প্ৰায় আজি এসপ্তাহ ধৰি ভুগি আছোঁ
Well, here's a look now at the other developments that are expected to make news today in our segment, The Day Ahead. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Sushma will be briefing the media on the possibility of the government convening a special session of Parliament to get key reforms measures like the GST passed. Both houses were adjourned sine die on August 13th but were not prorogued, leaving the option of reconvening them. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu will be meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi today. Naidu will be discussing the issue of special status for Andhra Pradesh after the bifurcation last year. The Patel community members hold a rally in Ahmedabad today to press for their demand for an OBC quota. The Mahakranti rally will march to the district collector's office. Community leaders have also called for a city bandh in view of the rally. In the run-up to the rally, a massive gathering has been organized. Nearly 25 lakh people are estimated to be present there. Japanese climber Nobukazu Kuriki will be the first man to begin ascent of Mount Everest after it was reopened for climbers since the April quake. Nepal has reopened the peak for climbing after the deadly avalanche following the quake. 18 climbers. Kuriki has lost 9 of his fingers to frostbite. Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will begin a 2-day official visit to Kazakhstan today, during which he will hold talks with top Kazakh leadership on issues of mutual and bilateral interest. Sharif will hold meetings with President Nazarbayev and Prime Minister Karim Masimov. A number of agreements and MOUs are expected to be signed. Well, the families of the fishermen shot dead by 2 Italian Marines off the Kerala coast in 2012 are insisting that the accused be tried in India. The reaction came after the International Maritime Tribunal ordered India and Italy to suspend all trial against the Marines in the 2012 case. The tribunal also sought initial reports from both nations by September 24th. Italy had taken the matter to the tribunal, challenging India's jurisdiction. The 2 Marines, Massimiliano Latorre and Salvatore Girone, are on trial in India for killing 2 fishermen off the Kerala coast in 2012. Italy claims UN laws grant jurisdiction to the country that owns the ship involved in incidents at sea. However, the UN tribunal didn't respond to Italy's request that its Marines should be freed from all restrictions.
ഇവിടുത്തെ ആളുകളെ അയക്കാൻ എനിക്കിഷ്ടമില്ല അവിടെ കൊണ്ടുപോവാം നമ്മളെ ഇവിടെ തന്നെ അവർക്ക് തീർപ്പുണ്ടായിരിക്കണം അവർക്ക് ദണ്ഡന കൊടുക്കണം എന്നിട്ട് ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ വീണ്ടും ഇവിടെ കടൽ പണിക്ക് പോകുന്നവർക്ക് എന്തൊരു ബാധികാപ്പുമില്ല ബാധികാപ്പില്ലെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ അവർ വീണ്ടും ഇനിയും ചെയ്യും അതിന് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ഏതൊരു സംശയവുമില്ല അവർ ചെയ്തു തന്നെ
The International Tribunal has passed a verdict. It is just like a stay in our High Court or Supreme Court. The verdict was prima facie against India. It is suspend all disputes, all court procedures till 24th September. So it is a strategic failure from the part of India. It is a legal failure, it is an administrative failure, and in the humanitarian ground, it is also a failure.
Moving on now, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj will begin her 2-day visit to Germany later in the day today. Swaraj is expected to hold meetings with German Foreign Minister Frank Steinmeier and a number of other leaders. Before departing for Berlin, the minister is scheduled to deliver a lecture on India's relations with Egypt and the region in Cairo. The public address will be attended by strategic thinkers, academics and diplomats. Swaraj will also be interacting with a number of Egyptian ministers and policy makers. Earlier on Monday, Swaraj met with several political leaders, including the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Both the countries also signed memorandums of understanding and on scientific and technical cooperation and tourism.
the Gulf and in the West Asia and North Africa is growing in significance from the perspective of our national interests. Not only is this area home to 7 million Indians, but is also crucial for our energy security, resources.
Well, here's a look now at some other international stories in our World Wrap. North Korea and South Korea have reached an agreement to de-escalate tensions on the Korean peninsula. South Korea will get the apology it demanded over recent military escalation by the North, and the South will stop broadcasting propaganda that infuriated the North. North Korea expressed regret that South Korean soldiers were injured by landmines and lifted its semi-state of war. A new party formed by rebel lawmakers who quit the governing Syriza party was given its chance to seek coalition partners to form a new government. Former Energy Minister Panagiotis Lafazanis, who leads the new anti-austerity party Popular Unity, was given the mandate after the failure of an attempt by the main opposition Conservative Party, New Democracy. Elections in Greece are likely to take place next month. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras resigned last week, 7 months into his 4-year term, following a rebellion in his party over Greece's new bailout. At least 8 people were killed in northeastern Turkey on Monday when 2 buildings collapsed due to heavy floods triggered by torrential rains. 2 others, including a child, are reported to have gone missing. Incessant rains are hampering the search operation. According to local media reports, heavy rains led to knocking down of trees and inundating houses and streets in the region. Well, let's take a look now at some overnight sports news in our Sports Beat. Lalita Shivaji Babar smashed her own national record in a creditable performance to qualify for the women's 3,000-meter steeplechase final in the World Athletics Championships. She clocked 9 minutes 27.86 seconds to be at the 4th place in the second heat. She also beat her own record set earlier during the heats. The final will take place on Wednesday. Babar is the first Indian to enter the 3,000-meter steeplechase final. Liverpool maintained their unbeaten start to the Premier League season as they played out a thrilling goalless draw with Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium. Liverpool dominated the first half but found Petr Cech in magnificent form as the former Chelsea goalkeeper saved miraculously from Christian Benteke and turned Philippe Coutinho's shot on to the post. Jamaica's Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price claimed an unprecedented third World 100 meters title in Beijing. She finished the race in 10.76 seconds. It is the second fastest time this year. Dutch athlete Daphne Schippers bagged silver while American Tori Bowie took the bronze. Well, that's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Have a nice day.